So, is being a landlord a real job? I'm going to go over 4 things that are really going to break down what landlords do and why it's really important for our society to have them. There's a lot of misconceptions about being a landlord, and a lot of people just think that you own the house, you get a tenant, and then you get paid. It's really a lot more complicated than that, and hopefully we can break down some things to shed some light on this topic. My name's Maverick, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about landlords and their duties. Step 1 in becoming a landlord is really acquiring the property. And in order to acquire a property, we need a down payment. For a normal person, a down payment is going to require some monetary sacrifices and living well below your means. That's a popular statement within the finance community, and it is really helpful in order to secure enough savings to put forth for an investment such as a rental property. In order to have enough money saved up for a rental property, a landlord needs to watch their cash outflow. They actually need to watch their cash outflow way more than their counterparts who are not trying to put their money towards an investment. This is going to take a lot of sacrifice, and typically it's going to be very difficult for someone to do this living in a society like ours where we are very keen on instant gratification. With this sort of mindset that we're going forth with, we're going to have delayed gratification, which means that we're going to have to save up a lot of money that we would normally want to put for new clothes, a new car, nice accessories, a brand new flat screen TV, something that we normally would buy if we weren't trying to put it for an investment. In other words, a potential sacrifice a landlord may have to make is, although they may be making $70,000 a year, in order to save the amount of money necessary for a down payment for a rental property, they're going to have to live like they make $40,000 a year. Saving that extra $20,000 per year, putting it towards either a down payment or renovations for their potential property. A common misconception is that a lot of landlords or people who own properties inherit them from their grandparents or their parents. The reality is that about 88% of millionaires are self-made, which, according to Fidelity Investments, the people who made this study, that means that less than 10% of the millionaire's net wealth was inherited. This means that only about 12% of millionaires only inherit more than 10% of their portfolio or their net wealth. This is important to note because a lot of landlords out there are probably self-made and they have not inherited the property in which a tenant is renting. This means that they worked really hard for what they got, meaning that they had to make sacrifices in their life in order to own what a tenant is renting. Sometimes that property is a major income stream that they need to live. The second major sacrifice or task that the landlord has to make is that once acquiring the property, they have to make the renovations necessary in order for it to be a livable space for their tenant. On top of that, landlords have to make it a desirable space because tenants can pick and choose where they want to live. And as the landlord, you want them to pick your house or unit. The first step in acquisition is obviously finding a property that you want to buy, but a big part of that is finding a loan or partners who want to go in with you on making an investment such as a rental property. The loans or the partner process with all the legal paperwork is a huge job just by itself, with a lot of work and money putting towards that issue. Also, most properties are not move-in ready, which means there's a lot of preliminary work that needs to be done before a tenant is even able to move in. There are properties out there that are move-in ready for tenants. However, a lot of times those properties are out of budget for most people, especially people who had to work for their down payment for the property. Some other tasks that a landlord has to complete in order to have a tenant start moving in are finding labor at or under budget. They also have to market the property to potential tenants so that tenants even know that that property is available for renting. And a lot of times you'll have to pay advertising fees or agents in order to get the focus on your property. Marketing is also important in how much you even get paid for your rent. If your marketing is not that great, then a tenant finds your property less desirable, which means that this is a big expense, but it also can pay off well if it's done correctly. A landlord also has to form a contract or pay a lawyer to form a contract without any loopholes that the tenant can exploit. This prevents loss of time and money in the process, and in California, this is a big deal. Also, if a landlord is deciding to pick their tenants themselves, they do have to pay or spend a lot of time doing background checks on all their tenants. This is important because you don't want to pick a bad tenant because that's going to make your life miserable. Basically, as the landlord, you're trying to find potential problem sources with your tenants so that you can get the best tenants possible for the money that they're going to be paying you. The third task is maintenance to the property, and this is where a lot of landlords go wrong, and I see complaints about this in comment sections all the time. I just want to make this clear for anybody who is a tenant and is having frustrations with their landlord. If you are having any troubles with landlords maintaining your property, making it a livable space, you do have the opportunity to leave. The best thing to do is to research and find out what you can do to help your situation. Without the right information, you can't do anything because you're going to be stuck in a situation where you don't know what to do. The maintenance done to a property depends on the contract. Some work is going to be on the tenant, some work is going to be on the landlord. Typically, if you have a good tenant, there is going to be quite a bit of work for you as the landlord. If something on the property breaks, then it's up to the landlord to fix it. And a good saying when coming down to this is you get what you pay for. Meaning, if you're spending a couple $100s on rent and something breaks in your property, then you shouldn't expect a landlord to be on top of things to fix that for you because you're paying so little rent. However, if you're paying thousands upon thousands of dollars in rent, you should expect the landlord to be more on top of things when coming down to fixing things on the property. However, disregarding expectations, landlords do have responsibility when it comes down to fixing things on the property. Repairs need to be done in a timely fashion, and sometimes this will have to do with the contract. Other times this will have to do with the laws set in place for rent. If the landlord does not provide timely repairs, the tenant is allowed to leave the property or take legal action against the landlord. Lots of people like to complain about this online without researching what they can do to actually fix their situation. Just like any other purchase decision, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into when it comes down to waiting on the landlord for repairs. To make sure that you are getting the most out of your money. Budgeting the finances that they receive is a huge key to success in this business. Just like it may be tough for a tenant to pay for repairs on their property, it's also tough for the landlord to pay for repairs on the property. This is why budgeting comes into play. This is why budgeting is a big role in being successful. Not only do you have to budget for small repairs such as door handles, hinges, locks, chipped tile, broken faucets, but you also have to save for big repairs such as electrical work, roofing, HVAC system, vacancy, cleanup and freshening up for each tenant. These are big expenses that need to be slowly paid off or saved up to, so when the time comes, the money is ready to spend. This means that the total take-home pay for a landlord is a lot lower than what you're paying in rent. Some rental properties cash flow, some of them don't. So depending on what the landlord is charging and what the area property costs are, Sometimes they'll be running a negative budget, sometimes they'll be making no money at all, and sometimes they'll be making a decent amount of money on the rent. The fourth thing that you need to take into consideration about landlords is liability. The landlord is taking all of the liability when it comes down to the property. Paying the mortgage, HOA fees, taxes, hiring and performing maintenance, etc. are all tasks that a landlord has to complete in order to be able to rent their property successfully. Therefore, they receive a premium for doing so. Also, states like California have very strict rental guidelines and regulations, making it even harder for landlords to successfully rent their property, which means the premium gets passed on to the tenant most of the time. Tenant's main job is to basically only paying rent each month and doing the tasks laid forth in the contract and documenting fixes that the property needs around them. As long as they do all of that, they're not liable for anything in the property unless they directly destroy it. This means that as a tenant, renting a property is a lot less stressful than being the landlord. I think a lot of times landlords are stereotyped into being old guys sitting on the beach drinking a pina colada as tenants are just paying them rent. Ultimately, that's really not the case. Landlords put in a lot of work into their properties to make everything work smoothly, and if they aren't making it work, somebody is, and those landlords are paying somebody to do it for them, which means they're really not making that much income from their property. The bottom line is that if you're not happy with your landlord, then I advise you guys to do some research and see what you can do to get yourself out of that situation, because the only person that's really going to help you is yourself. Don't rely on the situation to fix itself or things to change, because the definition of a crazy person is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. Get out there, find the information you need to change your situation, and if you really aren't happy with landlords in general, then I advise you guys to get out there and make buying a house a priority for yourself. The thing is, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. You're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices, but in the end, it's going to be worth it. Maybe someday you'll be able to own a rental property yourself as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you would, like this video and consider subscribing if you like my content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. This is going to be rough, Stetson. So it's just gonna be rough. Oh yeah. I probably did about like